Welcome, everybody. This is the Second Monitor Podcast. I am your host, CB, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Sashi.
That's me.
And this week, we are chatting about a bunch of things. It's been a while. Okay, let's be honest. We're going to break this down right off the top. We actually did record another episode, and then because I'm an idiot, I had my audio muted for the entire thing. And it was my favorite episode that we had recorded. There were so many fun conversations and everything like that. But it's been a few weeks. I've let the dust settle. My heart has mended a little bit. So, Sashi, we will attempt this again with different topics and everything.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I don't think we need to really revisit those. But yes, welcome to episode 4. Technically, episode 3 is non-existent, unfortunately. But we have a lot of things that happen. 3.5, yes, we have a lot to cover. So, in any case,
we do. And the first one that I want to jump into, because we do have a lot to talk about in a limited time, it's everything that's been going on between Sony, Microsoft, and the FTC. I don't want to get too much into the politics side of whether it's going to happen or should it happen or blah, 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 blah. It's all of the cool information that has come out because of, well, it's kind of funny how it's happened. Poorly redacted documents. I don't know if you've heard about this, but Sony submitted some documents and didn't properly redact them. And so it was very easy to actually read the parts that were supposed to be unreadable. A good example of this is that we were able to find out how much Sony spent to make both The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West. And obviously that is highly confidential information, but apparently they cost over $200 million each. One cost, I think, $220 million, being The Last of Us 2, and Horizon cost $212. So those are huge sums of money, especially for single-player games. Like, we've heard crazy numbers for Grand Theft Auto before. We've heard crazy numbers for things like Destiny 2. But to spend that amount of money on a single-player game, what do you think about that, Sashi?
That is a lot more than I would have expected, especially I think for Horizon. I didn't see Horizon as this really big budget title, comparatively to comparatively to like The Last of Us or Uncharted. It hasn't been at the same level, at least in my opinion. But that is a huge amount of money. I don't know where they're getting all this money, but they're making great games with it. So hey, I like that they're pushing these single player games. Unfortunately, they're switching tactics towards more of a service based titles, which I don't know how to feel about, because I love these games. I love The Last of Us. I love Horizon. So I'll see what the future holds. I'm not that excited about Sony's future, but they have some bangers coming up. But those would be, again, the single player titles like Spider-Man 2. I'm not that excited about the live service ones.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. It's interesting because this is obviously a huge sum of money, but you have to figure for something like a marathon that's going to have ongoing costs as well as upfront costs, that's probably going to be $200 million upfront and then a lot more down the line. And if they have, again, 60% of their budget going towards live service titles, how are all of those going to be supported at the same time financially, especially if even one of them is not earning a profit? Now, of course, there are different budgets flying around. Not every single one of those is going to be a marathon budget. But I'm with you. I do go to Sony for their single-player experiences, especially because I have enjoyed the ability, especially with things like Diablo 4 recently, being able to play with people on different platforms. That is a big draw. Being able to say, oh, okay, my friend's on Xbox, my friend's on PC. We can still hop into a lobby together and play. If it's a Sony game, I imagine something like a Marathon is going to come to PC. But then if none of my friends have PlayStation, who do I play with?
Yeah, I think that one might have crossplay, just looking at things like Destiny, which crossplays with everything on the planet. But
even Stadia.
Even Stadia. Yes,
Rest in peace.
It is on Stadia. or was on Stadia. But yeah, no, I think if I had to predict, I'd say like 80% of those live service titles would just close down within a year. I don't
Yeah.
think, yeah, I don't see all of those being successful and kept up.
Now, in terms of these budgets, it doesn't really surprise me that these are this high when I consider the size of the teams. They also talked about, The Last of Us 2 having 200 people working on it. And that game, I can't remember exactly how long it took. I think it came out in 2020. Uncharted 4 came out in, I want to say, 2015? So, 5 years of development with 200 people. I could definitely see it costing them $200 million. A lot of groundbreaking technology in terms of new stuff they developed for the engine, such as cloth physics and, incredible facial capture and that sort of stuff. Same thing with, Horizon Forbidden West. I think Guerrilla Games should be respected for the technology they put into their games. More than anybody else, I think they're really, really pushing what can be done with graphics. Especially on something like a PlayStation 4. That game ran really, really well, looked fantastic, and yet I think it's up there with the best looking games out there. Even in terms of, I think one of the biggest complaints with the first game was the facial capture technology. It just wasn't quite there, especially in a lot of the side conversations, whereas in Forbidden West, some incredible in animation work when it came to performance capture. So I think for Guerrilla Games, they're developing this engine that is used by a lot of people, Decima. So I think they pour a lot of money into that. I think something like a Returnal, which is made by Housemarque, probably has a smaller budget. I imagine it still gets a healthy budget considering it's Sony, first party now. But I don't think it's going to be $200 million. I think these are the marquee titles. But I would be curious to see what would a budget look like for something like a Halo Infinite or what's another big title? A Gears of War 5. These more recent titles that have done all right for Microsoft, but I would want to see how that investment has actually played out for them versus these, which we know sold extremely well, both of them. The Last of Us sold millions and millions of copies. Horizon Forbidden West, unfortunately, always falls into the trap of releasing alongside Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild. So maybe it doesn't sell quite as well up front, but we also know that it sold really, really well over time. And it is, again, just kind of like a showpiece for the platform. So I think they more than made their money back. If I had to guess, The Last of Us Part 2 probably made them well over $1 billion within the first few weeks. So it's not like they're not earning the money back, but it is just interesting to see these numbers.
It is a lot of money. But I also like that we're getting games like these because these AAA studios are the only ones that could make games like these where you have Red Dead Redemption 2 where your horse's balls shrink, which you can't find anywhere else.
Is that a selling feature?
That is a selling feature, yes. Absolutely.
Oh boy.
But I want to see more of these. I hope we get more games where companies just pour money in. It's that they're throwing money at the wall and they see what comes out. So
it's true. I hope that they do make games that they're passionate about and actually want to be making, right? Now, another thing that came out of this was information about Call of Duty. And not necessarily, again, focusing on whether Call of Duty will come to PlayStation if it is acquired or anything like that. But we got information about the people who play Call of Duty on PlayStation consoles. So apparently, 1 million PlayStation owners only play Call of Duty. They do not play a single other game with their PlayStation. They buy it to play Call of Duty. 1 million people. Does that seem high to you?
That is pretty high. Yeah, I don't know. Comparative, I don't know what to compare it to, but that is a lot of people. So
And okay, so 1 million people play 100% of their gaming time on Call of Duty. However, 6 million people spend 70% of their time playing Call of Duty. So I have a friend who has a PlayStation. He only played Call of Duty Last Generation. That was his only game. But There's one game that he loves other than Call of Duty, and that was Diablo. He loves Diablo. So now he plays Diablo and Call of Duty. So he would probably fall into this camp. Like, really, his PlayStation is a Call of Duty and Diablo machine. So 6 million people, roughly. Now, 14. So this is an interesting one because 30% of PlayStation owners spend, what is it? Oh, sorry. 14 million users, roughly, spend 30% or more of their time on PlayStation playing Call of Duty. These are some crazy numbers. 14 million. So, I mean, this is across PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5. So it's kind of hard to judge the numbers because PlayStation 4 has sold over 110 million, I think, at this point. And PlayStation 5 is probably around 30 million at this point, I believe, sold. Don't quote me on that. But it's kind of hard to judge exactly where that 14 million falls. But that sounds very, very high. It goes to show that even today, Call of Duty is still extremely relevant. And so when we're looking at the overall picture, they were saying that Call of Duty is worth $800 million for PlayStation revenue in just the US during 2021.
Yeah, it's very impressive. I'm still surprised how popular Call of Duty is to this day. Even you go on Twitch and you see that Modern Warfare is up there at the top as well. No, they've kind of kept up with the changing market. They've developed things like a battle royale mode. They haven't stuck to the classic Call of Duty fast-paced gameplay at all times. So I think they deserve its success. I personally really like the games as well, and I'm not surprised to see that people keep playing them every day to that extent, like something like League of Legends, where you would spend most of your time in one game. So not surprising at all.
League of Legends is an interesting comparison point because it does feel like a lot of people kind of choose their one game and then stick with it. So League of Legends is your primary game. And yeah, you might play the occasional other thing with people, but like League of Legends is your game. Valorant, same thing. If you're a Valorant player, Valorant might be your game. And then, yeah, you might play a little something else. But really, that's where the largest chunk of your time goes. And there's a lot of people. What I'm learning is there are a lot of gamers who have that one main thing that keeps them coming back. That's their social game. That's their competitive game. And that's what they're looking for out of their gaming experience. Whereas, I fall into the opposite camp where I play as many games as possible. I know you do a lot of that as well. We kind of hop between games. We like single player games.
Yeah. I didn't used to be like that, though.
Oh, really?
Back in the day, I would only play League of Legends. I think there's some kind of a brand loyalty as well there, where you like the company, you like the game, and you just want to get all the achievements and beat the game, if you will, which League of Legends doesn't have an end. So, but you want to get to the top, you want to get the next rank or whatever. And now they've included achievements, and they've included all of these things where you can play the game and get mastery points and get all these achieve things that make you feel better for spending your time in the game.
It's like its own little ecosystem now.
It's its own little thing where you can, like, for someone who likes achievement hunting, for example, like I do, if I go into a game and I really like it, I'm going to try to get every achievement. I've done that in Ruined King. I've done that in like some other League of Legends games. But it's they try to engage you more, and it's not just like League of Legends or Riot Games. It's people spend most of their time in one game, like Genshin or whatever the game might be. I know a lot of people who only play one game and they don't play anything else. But I used to be like that back in the day, but I changed my opinion on that after I kind of started branching out of League of Legends, and I discovered that there's actually good games in the world. And I was like, okay, well, I have to see what's out there. And so these days I actually play. I try demos, I try new releases, I try all kinds of games to see what I like. And there's a lot of games that I really like. And League of Legends used to be my favorite game for a long time. I've tried other games besides it, but I was like, well, nothing is as close as the feeling that I get from League of Legends. But once that changed, it's like the gates opened, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna try that.
So let's quickly talk about this because I find it really interesting. Like, you were somebody who focused on one game. What was it before League of Legends had, as you said, all of these extra achievements, and there wasn't the night market or any of this stuff that kept you coming back day after day doing your dailies. It really was back in the day just boot up the game. There was unranked and ranked, and that was essentially it. What kept you coming back?
It was the fact that everyone was playing it in my friend group. So if you have like 5 friends and they're all online every day, you want to go online as well to engage with them, play with them. So that was one thing. But once everyone stopped playing League eventually, which everyone did, I started playing ranked, which I also started enjoying a lot. It offered a fresh take on a game that I've been playing for a long time because it's a completely different environment. You have to focus on completely different things. So
right.
There is a lot to the game. There's a lot that the game can offer you in terms of replayability. So that's what kept me coming back, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I never really fell into that. Even when I did play a lot of Overwatch back in the day, that was the only game that I've somewhat gotten into competitively. It was like Overwatch on the side while I also played through X, Y, and Z game. So it's really interesting hearing that perspective. I guess my brain is not wired for a single game. I get tired of something very, very quickly. Like at E3, I've talked about this before, but I just get so much more excited for a brand new game in a series I've never heard of than I will for a sequel to even my favorite game. Yeah, of course, I am so excited that there is a Death Stranding 2, but my hope there is that it's nothing like Death Stranding 1. I want to be in the world of it, but I want something unlike anything else. It's why Tears of the Kingdom has also been so enjoyable, because while it's so familiar and feels a little bit like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom is unlike Breath of the Wild in so many ways. It's entirely new mechanics. You think you know where you're going, and then you don't. It's that kind of sequel. Like, I'm always looking for the new thing, the new innovation, something that's going to push the industry forward. I'm looking for that new experience. So it's so interesting just getting your perspective and hearing about these people that, it even talks about how much these players have played. Like, the average Call of Duty player spent 116 hours in a year playing Call of Duty, which maybe for somebody whose main hobby is gaming seems like a small amount of time. But for somebody who is a mother of 2 children and only gets a certain number of hours gaming each week, that's a significant amount of time. For the players who spent 70% or more of their time, that time even goes up, actually. So it's 296 hours per year. So for the people who really are just playing that game, it's like they put in a good chunk of hours.
Yeah, that is a lot of time. And there's another thing also. I think these games are kind of easy to get into. They're kind of cultural phenomenons, so everyone kind of knows them. And they have robust tutorials which are easy to get even for someone who hasn't played games in their life. I remember back in the day, I've played games outside of League, and I played Portal, the first Portal, and I couldn't finish it because I couldn't get past one of the puzzles. I've played I've played Legend of Zelda games, but I've never played a Legend of Zelda game without a guide. So
sure, yeah. So as you said, it's like that approachability, right? It's you're overcoming something in a competitive game, but it's not the mechanics necessarily holding you back. It's other people that you just need to get better, as opposed to, okay, I don't really understand what's happening. I'm just going to look it up in a guide.
Yeah, exactly.
Different kind of challenge.
They have mass appeal.
Mass appeal. You heard it here first. Sashi doesn't believe Zelda has mass appeal. I get it. Now, speaking of Nintendo, transitioning a little bit here, Nintendo made an announcement this week. Well, not even made an announcement. This just came up in a conversation with President Shintaro Furukawa. He was asked about the next generation of Nintendo consoles. Obviously, they've said we're not going to be bringing out a new console before March of 2024. But that doesn't mean they're not starting to talk about that transition a little bit.
Yeah, I hope it comes out in March of 2024. So I would love that. I'm really looking forward to the new console. They did mention that they're gonna make the transition as smooth as possible between the last gen and the new gen.
That's exactly the headline that I was going to be bringing up, so that's perfect.
Yeah, I don't know what that means exactly. Except that there's no I don't know what that means. Does that mean just the profiles? Does that mean you get backwards compatibility? Is it going to be a Switch 2? Is it going to be a completely different form factor? We'll see.
Well, let's read the exact comments, and then that way we can try to determine what we actually think this will mean. So this is from gamesindustry.biz. It says, Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa says the firm aims to smoothly transition its consumers to the next console. As reported by VGC, the comments were part of a shareholder meeting this month as Furukawa fielded questions regarding backwards compatibility and new hardware. The executive said, many of our customers have been playing on the Nintendo Switch with download software or download-only software, and compared to previous game consoles, the ratio of digital sales has been increasing. As a company, we would like to continue proposing unique gameplay through dedicated game consoles that integrate hardware and software in the future, so please look forward to it. Furukawa provided details saying that the shift to the next generation hardware will likely be easier due to the Nintendo account system created back in 2016. So what do you take from that? What does that say to you? Is that just accounts?
I don't know what to speculate based on that. I would just based on that, I would guess it's just accounts. I'm sure they would have some backwards compatibility. They've been investing a lot into backwards compatibility for the Switch itself, with the NES titles, all the older console titles that they've brought into Nintendo Online, Nintendo Switch Online, whatever that is. So I can see that coming back to the new console, but I don't think all games will be compatible with the new Switch, if it is a Switch.
Because obviously our hope here is that this would actually be backwards compatibility, full backwards compatibility. Yeah. You move on to the Switch 2 or whatever it's called. You have access to your full library from day one so that you can play Metroid Prime 4 on launch day, and you're so excited, but once you get through that campaign, you can then just go and pick up Tears of the Kingdom again and start playing that, or whatever other Switch titles you have. It's no guarantee.
Yeah, I would be happy with just a performance upgrade where they bump up the resolution to like 1080p 60 frames, let's say. That would be fine for me. I'd buy that console as well, but I don't know if we necessarily would call it a Switch 2.
This is always the debate, right? And I don't think we're going to have any answers today. Nobody knows what Nintendo is going to do. Obviously, a lot of us just want a Switch 2. That is the ideal. We love the Switch. Everything. The Switch is a great little device, a handheld.
It's great.
But Nintendo doesn't typically do what anybody expects. No one expected the Switch in the first place. I mean, there had been rumors about these things, but definitely not how it came about. Nobody expected the Wii U or the Wii. Basically, going back to the GameCube, they haven't really shot for a console that focuses on power. Now, obviously, they need more power, but to what extent do you think they're actually going to go with that? Do you think that they're going to create something that is on par with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X? Or are we looking at maybe something that's more in the realm of an Xbox One and PlayStation 4 just to keep some level of parity?
Well, imagine that they release the new Nintendo Switch 8K 144 hertz.
Surpasses the PlayStation 5?
Yeah. No, I don't think that's... I think just based on their history, they're not going to be aiming for top of the shelf, outperforming the other consoles. I think they'll do their own thing. I think that they will try to upgrade the Switch, just because it's been this popular. I know they released the Switch OLED, but that's kind of not the biggest upgrade that you could get. I think they'll try to level it up a bit. I don't think they'll be going for a new form factor necessarily. I hope they do, but I don't predict that will be the case unless they drop the Nintendo Labo 2 out of nowhere. We'll see.
The Labo 2 would be a bold new direction. You make your own console from cardboard. I mean, can you imagine? It would be wild. I don't have a lot more to say about that. It's just one of those interesting conversations where Nintendo in some ways is the absolute greatest video game company. They create such incredible experiences, amazing games, and they are so friendly and positive. And then you actually look at what the company's doing and saying sometimes, and you're like, you are the most anti-consumer company out there. So it's a little tricky.
Yeah. And I don't know, that might be a cultural difference as well, I suppose.
It could be.
Yeah. But no,
I don't
I
know.
love it and hate it. I have a love-hate relationship with it.
Love-hate relationship. Just let us emulate games, Nintendo. Anyways, okay, so gamesindustry.biz as well. This I had not heard of until this morning. Among Us is getting an animated TV series. Have you heard about this?
No. Why is it getting an animated?
That's your question, is why?
Why? But why? Yes. No, I suppose it makes sense for such a big franchise, but I don't see how this could be translated into an animated series.
I don't know what this means. All I know is their Twitter account tweeted out, "Hello," and then in all caps, "We're making an animated TV series." Oh my god, and that was the tweet. And then there's an article on Variety that they link to that explains more in depth about who's involved with it. The person behind Big Mouth, the Netflix animated series, and Star Trek Lower Decks. That's the animation studio that's going to be doing it. They have a bunch of creators on board for it. No network or streamer is currently attached, but those conversations are said to be ongoing. I could see Among Us actually making an interesting series, especially if it was kind of one of those where the episodes don't really connect to one another. So every week it's people getting stabbed in the back, and it's like Red dies every single week or something, but it's always the conversation's happening around it, and somehow Red just pops back to life the next week like nothing happened. I could see there being some really cool ideas with living on a spaceship and all the suspect characters out there, and everybody just goes by red, orange, and blue,
Yeah. I have a lot of faith in the developer as well. They've put out really, really funny things. I'm sure it's going to be great. I'll definitely be there to watch it.
It's also interesting because the article here on Variety kind of highlights the successes of Among Us. So, for example, during Q4 2020, the game had nearly 500 million monthly active users and more than 4 billion views on YouTube, more than 1.2 billion viewing sessions on Twitch. That is kind of insane, considering that when it blew up, I believe the studio had 3 employees.
Yeah.
So...
yeah.
A small success.
Yeah. A small success. But, I mean, the studio is great because it kind of has kept this small studio energy, even though this game has been absolutely huge. And I love the studio for that. Everything that I've seen from them has been really good. So I have high expectations of this. So
it's inner sloth, right?
Inner Sloth, yes.
Okay. Yeah.
I also haven't played Among Us that much, but
Hmm.
from what I have played, I had a lot of fun with it. I know there's other games like Goose Goose Duck that have been coming out that people really like, but there's nothing like Among Us, and there never
No,
will be. So
it's so interesting that it became this cultural phenomenon because essentially it took
yeah,
an existing formula and just made it as accessible as possible. It's Mafia. It's I'm trying to think of all the different. It's Coup. There's so many games within that already, especially card games. This exists. There's so many different formats
yeah,
of it, and they just took that and put it into video game form with tasks and easily recognizable characters, and simple 2D animation. So it doesn't need to anything fancy to run it. And that just hit at exactly the right time. It had already been out for a couple of years, but once it was kind of picked up, it was the perfect pandemic game, right?
yeah. And it reminds me of these old what was it, new Flash games?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The
yeah,
ones
yeah. Like
on
Newgrounds.
Newgrounds, yes. And it had such a charm to it. I kind of miss those days already, but
For sure.
I know it's still very popular, but it's not as popular as it used to be. But hey, you know what? Among Us on the big sussy screen. I'm happy to see it.
We
I'll be
love to
there.
see it. We love to see it. Well, the other news this week is that I don't know about you, but I have been playing Final Fantasy XVI, and it was just announced that Final Fantasy XVI has sold 3 million units. So, somewhat of an impressive achievement. I mean, obviously, 3 million units is excellent. That is very, very good. However, within context, well, okay, let's start without context. 3 million units, Sashi, is that impressive?
See, I don't know how the previous Final Fantasy games were selling. I know that the remake did very good as well, so I'm curious to see how the remake did. But 3 million is not a small feat. I mean, that's pretty impressive by itself.
Well,
So
here, let you know exactly how it did in comparison to some of its predecessors. All right, so the figure means, this is coming from videogameschronicle.com, the figure means Final Fantasy XVI is roughly in line with Final Fantasy VII Remake's launch, which managed around 3.5 million copies in 10 days. So I think that makes sense, right? It is a brand new Final Fantasy, but Final Fantasy VII, for a lot of people, holds that deep, deep nostalgia. The other factor is that when that game came out, it came out on PlayStation 4, which by that point had probably around 100 million units out in the wild versus 30 million PlayStation 5. So do you think that plays a factor?
I think so. Yeah, I think to some extent it must play a factor, but it's also, I don't know. It's a PlayStation exclusive. I could see that kind of affecting its sales. Um, yeah, I couldn't play it. I don't know. I've heard that it's good, but I've also heard some people who really disliked it. But I think for the most part, people really really like the game. I think that's what matters at the end, and it seems like it's been doing good. So I don't think it's been doing as good as people predicted it was gonna do, because it had a lot of hype surrounding it, with the Devil May Cry developer coming in with all the promotions. The game looked great. There was, I don't know if you saw the stream. There was a stream of Maximilian. He's a YouTuber and the dev playing the game, and Maximilian couldn't beat the boss. He was struggling a lot, and so he gave the controller to the dev, to the Devil May Cry guy, and he just aces it, doesn't get hit once. He's like, oh, you know what? I don't even need to use his limit break. He's like, uses it at the last moment to look cool. He's like, it was really funny, but that
Respect.
got me even more excited for the game, because you could see that the devs know what they're doing, and I love to see that. But with that in
It's
mind,
funny, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
with that in mind, I think because it was so overhyped, I think we expected more, but I think it hasn't done bad at all.
Yeah, when I think about the hype surrounding the game, I don't think it was nearly as hyped up as Final Fantasy 15. You know, I remember thinking, Square, why are you putting so much money into not development, the advertising behind this? They did an anime, they did an entire 3D CG movie. You know, they were spending so much on advertising that game. And on one hand, I'm like, that's a crazy amount of money to spend. On the other, I think it actually worked for them because Final Fantasy 15, for comparison, remains the fastest selling entry in the series with 5 million units shipped and sold digitally back in November 2016. So that's probably a better comparison point than Final Fantasy VII Remake. Just because, you know, there were less PlayStation 4s out at that point. It was 3 years into the cycle of consoles. Obviously, it was easier to get a PlayStation 4 than a PlayStation 5, but it's probably a better comparison point. And Final Fantasy 15 did sell better despite maybe not being as solid an entry, depending on who you talk to. It scored lower. People had a lot of complaints about the story and all of this different stuff. Versus 16, definitely some people are a little put off at how little of an RPG it is and how maybe serious it is. As you said, it's a very Devil May Cry. This is not an RPG. I would not say it's an RPG at all. It's Devil May Cry with a heavy emphasis on a dark, serious story. A lot of cutscenes.
Yeah. It's deviated from the original Final Fantasy formula a little bit, or a lot of it. But
a lot of it.
So that that might play some factor into it. I think maybe some people who were really big fans of Final Fantasy weren't that excited to have, that mixed in with the combat of Devil May Cry. But I think most people were really excited about it. Now, it doesn't have the boy band of Final Fantasy 15, clearly.
The only disappointment, yeah.
But I think the game's great. I've really enjoyed everything I've seen from it. I really want to play it, but I can't play it because it's exclusive. So I hope it comes out.
We actually, anecdotally, we know somebody who went and bought a PlayStation 5 just to play Final Fantasy 16. So, it worked on somebody, that Final Fantasy hype. For somebody who I've put in probably, I think, not that much time, but I've put in about 15 hours so far. And I've really loved the game. I think the story hits so hard right off the bat. The demo was the thing that really sold me. I mean, I was going to be probably getting it day one anyways, but when that came through, I was like, whoa, we might be looking at one of the best Final Fantasy games. Do I think it probably has lived up to that? For me, time will tell. It is... I would never call it a bare bones experience because I do think the combat is so excellent, but it has leaned so hard away from some elements that kind of define Final Fantasy. There are, for example, there's no elemental effects. So if you're fighting a fire monster with fire, you do just as much damage as if you were using water. And so you're fighting this fire bomb. Normally that would heal it. Or for example, if you're fighting something that uses poison, there's no status ailments or effects that come from that. And so it's a little strange in that way, I will say. But I still think the emphasis on story is excellent. The performances are amazing. The game looks gorgeous. And the combat is so much fun that I'm not really finding myself focusing on the fact that the side quests always come down to either fetch quests, at least so far. They all come down to just being a fetch quest or a combat quest. It's not like there are mini games or a whole bunch of different systems that you're engaging with, like in Final Fantasy usually. But that's okay to me because I am engaging with the combat so much and enjoying it so much that once I get to another cutscene, I just put the controller down and I watch it like it's a TV show. And then I pick it up and I go Devil May Cry for a few minutes and then it's back to the same thing. So I enjoy the loop, but I do fully understand why some other people maybe are like... let's walk it back and find the middle ground.
Yeah, no, I see that absolutely, but not a flop by any means.
No. Okay. Well, that's gonna do it for our news this week. So, Sashi, what are you playing? What have you been up to these last few weeks?
Well, we had the Steam Next Fest happening with all the demos. I tried a lot of new games. I really enjoyed all of them. One that I played, and I know you've played, is Lies of P, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was great. I didn't think it played as good as something like Bloodborne or Dark Souls in terms of the controls, but it was still pretty good. It was really good. I really enjoyed the story and the setting of it. The developers said that they are going for a Bloodborne 2. If From Software doesn't want to create it, we'll make it ourselves, kind of thing.
Bold
But
statement.
bold statement. I don't think it's there yet, but that was just the demo. But in any case, I thought it was great. I thought the game's great. I thought all the systems surrounding the game were great. I struggled a lot on the first boss. The second one was a bit easier, but
Same.
it was also
Yeah.
a very, it was a very, it was a big demo. There was a lot of substance to it, so I really enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
I appreciate that a lot of developers are doing that right now with putting out demos. I think about this. I think about Final Fantasy XVI. That was also like several hours of content. I think about Triangle Strategy. That was another one that played the demo, loved the demo. You know, these sorts of ones. Because I do think that it allows consumers to really decide on whether the game is for them or not. And in most cases, I've seen people being like, yeah, now I'm going to get it. So that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, I didn't even have Lies of P on my radar. I didn't. I followed it, but it didn't really look that interesting to me to where I would consider buying it.
Right.
After playing it, I got the same feeling of playing Dark Souls 2 is specifically.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And yeah, it felt really good. And now I am actually considering it. So it's one of those demos that worked on me as well.
So what did you think, just to dig a little bit further into it, because we have both played it, what did you think of sort of the art style? It's very steampunk, I would say.
It is. I personally really liked it. I liked how dark and gritty it is. Sometimes it's even harder to see in the rain and in the dark, but
Yep.
I actually really like that. The designs of the characters, of the enemies are also really cool. The main character
Automatons
is
kind of
also,
thing.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of like Dark Souls, but it's a little bit more, how do I call it? Like a little bit more Eastern inspired,
Sure.
I suppose.
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah, no, it appealed to me personally a lot.
In terms of the combat, personally, the issue that I ran into was there was so much motion blur on the camera, and the camera
There was
kind of rotates behind the character at all times. So unfortunately, I had some motion sickness from the game. So it's not one that I'll be able to play until they kind of add more settings that allow you to adjust that, like turn off the motion blur and that sort of stuff. But the combat, I did enjoy how weapons felt to use, but the dodge mechanic was a big issue for me. It's like he leaps and he goes 10 centimeters. Like it was so tiny, the amount of distance that he rolled versus something like a FromSoft game. And I've run into the other issue, Code Vein, you leap for miles. So every game kind of has these systems that are variations of each other. How did you feel about the combat, the weapons and the dodging and stuff?
The dodging was the thing that really bugged me because I felt like there was some kind of a delay in the dodging. Whenever I press it, I could never like get it right. Like there's either, because in Dark Souls, dodging is very easy. There's a lot of invisibility frames that you have when you're dodging, so it's kind of easy to play. I don't know if I would call Dark Souls easy to play, but
I wouldn't. But once you understand its language, that you can kind of like get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like easy to pick up, I guess. It's harder to master once you actually have to time it. I didn't find that in Lies of P. It was hard to pick up, hard to master, I guess. But so I ended up not using the dodge at all. I just started using the parry button because it was actually a lot easier to just time the parry than to time the dodge.
Right. Seems a little backwards, right?
Seems a little backwards.
Okay.
Exactly.
What else have you been playing?
I played Sea of Stars, the demo for Sea of Stars. That is the game that we have the fantasy draft that we're playing, a little internal game.
Mm-hmm.
And I selected it as one of the games that I thought would score really well, and I am not disappointed. I thought the demo was great. I had a lot of fun with it.
So can you tell us a little bit more about it? For those people who don't know the name Sea of Stars, what is it?
Yes, so it is a pixelated style RPG kind of Um, what would I compare it to? I'm not sure. It's it has very fluid animations. That's one of the things that stood out to me, and it was a very cozy game. So
Mm.
you get dropped into this really beautiful world. You get to look around and see all of these really cool things. I was just walking around the world for a long time. There was fishing in the game. You can fish. Any game that has fishing is instantly a point up for me.
That's exactly it. Fishing mini games. Yeah, so good.
And it's done so well as well. You have this mechanic where you have to like keep it in the middle and kind of pull it while it's in the middle. You have to pull the thing, kind of like the fishing in Ruined King, a League of Legends game. If anyone's played that, kind of similar to it. Really enjoyable. I actually spent like 30 minutes of that demo just fishing, and I didn't even need it because I didn't need to cook anything. I didn't end up losing a lot of health. The combat feels really good. I was really impressed with the combat, the way that it transitions from the world to the combat. There's no loading screen, there's no cutscene. You just start the combat right there. It's like a kind of like a Pokemon style where you encounter things in the world, but it transitions directly into this turn-based combat where you get to like pick your skills and everything. It reminds me of the old Final Fantasy games. I don't know if you've played Final Fantasy like 1, 2, 3.
I have
sort of
never played
those.
the originals. No, 6 is my first.
Yeah, I have played those. But I haven't played some of the newer ones, which is funny. But I have played the older ones. I used to be really into retro games back in the day, and it reminds me a lot of those. It has that same charm to it. I can't describe it, but it's very charming. It's a very charming game that I think will score really well.
That's really cool. I'm excited for it. I haven't paid too much attention to it outside of when we were looking into it for Fantasy Draft, but it is one that I'm definitely gonna check out. I have some
Yeah.
breaking news that a coworker just sent me.
Breaking news.
Breaking news just came out at 11 a.m. my time. So this is mere 11 minutes ago.
Yeah.
This is from Jason Schreier. Usually I'm reporting on delays, so it's fun to be able to share that the highly anticipated RPG Baldur's Gate 3 is moving forward from August 31st to August 3rd, according to developer Larian, giving it some space from Starfield.
Ooh.
That's on PC. The PS5 version is now on September 6th, so that was delayed by 1 week.
Okay.
Very interesting. Not often that you see a game get moved up.
Yeah, that tells me that they're probably very confident with releasing the game as it is.
I would agree with that, but it also shows what a powerhouse Starfield is. Once Starfield announced their date, I'm sure internally they were panicking a little bit. Are people really going to buy this CRPG if Starfield is a mere week afterwards?
Yeah, no, that's true. And I've had a lot of thoughts on Baldur's Gate, but I do actually have. I think it's gonna do all right. I think it has a lot of potential to do good. I wonder if they're gonna pull it off. And with pushing the date by this much time forward, I don't know if I'm that confident in how the game is gonna play, because we've had a lot of bad releases recently. Not bad games necessarily, but bad ports. And I hope that's not one of them.
You know what? I don't think it will be. I think by separating out their PC release and console release, that's probably where their time was going. They wanted to release day and date between these two versions. You know, this game has been in the works for years and years and years now, and so much of the first chunk of the game has been playable during that time, so they've been able to tweak, and then you've got the rest of the game that's been kind of hidden development because that's story and further mechanics and that sort of stuff. But everybody's been loving the first bit of the game so much that I have confidence on PC that it will at least run well, look good. Sure, there might be some bugs still, but I don't think that would affect the overall score too much. It's good news to me that they did delay the console instead of trying to push that up. I think the core crowd probably will play on PC, And so a lot of their sales will come from that. I was planning to play on console because I played Divinity on console, and it actually worked seamlessly. It was a really, really smooth experience. Plus, you can play couch co-op, and, my partner might want to try it out. That would be kind of cool as well. So good news, bad news on that front, but interesting news all the same. At least they are aware of the size of Starfield. That's the news I'm going to take away from that.
You're very excited about it. I know you are. So, and we have a bet on it. We'll see how that goes.
90 plus game. Let's go.
90 plus game. I don't know. That is a big score. Although we have had a lot of games go 90 plus, but not a lot of them have held that score for a long time.
That's true.
So.
That's true. There have only been a few that have actually stayed in the 90 plus category. We've got Tears of the Kingdom. We've got Street Fighter 6. I can't remember if there are any others off the top of my head, but you're right. Yeah, a lot of others have kind of fallen on that like 90, 91, and then they kind of drop down to 88, 89 kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
What else have you been playing? Any other demos that you played during Steam Next Fest?
I don't think so, but I did play. Well, I watched, of course, Summer Game Fest. I wasn't that impressed with. There's a few games that stood out to me, but not too many. In terms of games that I've been playing just the usual. I haven't had a lot of time. As you can see, I will be moving soon. So I've been very busy packing up. This is the last episode in this place that you will see. So
I always liked the look of this apartment. It was so pretty.
It was so pretty. Not anymore. No, once I'm gone, it's half of it is, or all of it is gone. So
darn. Goodbye,
it's
apartment.
not going to be pretty anymore without me and you here. So
wait a second.
The new one will be pretty as well.
Okay, I have faith.
Yes, but yeah, I haven't had a lot of time. But you have been playing some video games as well. Have you tried any demos from the Steam Next Fest apart from Lies of P?
So no, I didn't play any demos on Steam Next Fest. I have played a few things. I'm trying to remember what I've been playing aside from Final Fantasy. Everything kind of collapsed in on itself once that hit because that took up a bunch of my time. Still playing Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah. I'm hundreds of hours in at this point. Still have only completed 2 regions. Haven't continued the main storyline. Just finally got the Master Sword. Did it by accident. Didn't actually. I was supposed to do the quest to get it. Just came across it, found it. It's a wild time. What a game. Been playing Diablo 4, of course, with people. That's been really fun, kind of jumping in with others, playing different classes. Favorite thing in the game right now is just doing all of the strongholds with people because they scale up so well. So no matter what your class is, no matter what your level is, being able to jump in and just tackle those together, it's a real challenge. Like some of us are still not level 50, and then we have a couple people who are in their 60s and 70s who have legendaries upon legendaries with good synergies. So they kind of walk through things, and so if we're struggling, they can kind of help us out. But they can't tackle things on their own because of the scaling, so they do still need us. It's a good balance, and I've been really, really happy with how they have tweaked and fixed things, and so that's been a lot of fun. Outside of the usual games, though, no, I don't think at the moment I've been trying out too many things. There's a lot on the horizon that I'm excited about, but for the moment, I'm kind of locked into those 3 big games between Tears of the Kingdom, Diablo, and Final Fantasy. So next time, that might be a different conversation, but for now, I'm just really enjoying. Again, these are 3 franchises that you usually get one of every 5 or 6 years, and to get all of them at once is both overwhelming and just fulfilling in so many ways. Yeah, no, I know what you mean. There's a lot of really big releases that, even just playing The Legend of Zelda, you don't really need anything else because that game has so much content to it. You could probably play why did
forever.
you have to release Final Fantasy and Diablo a month after? I need at least 6 months to get through Tears of the Kingdom. It's one of the only games that I can fully focus on. If nothing else had come out, I would have just been playing that. Every day I put in a couple hours, and I do so much and yet so little. So, I feel like I do nothing every time, and yet I'm completing shrines. I'm getting new pieces of armor. I'm doing combat challenges. I'm finding Koroks. Like every day, I do so much, and yet I'm like, okay, well, that was maybe 0.5% of the game. So, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, because the first time I booted it up, I played it for like 10 hours straight or something. Crazy amount. And
Yep.
I opened the map and I discovered like this little point in the map and I've done 3-4 shrines and I'm like,
Yep.
there's like 150 more. How am I going to complete this?
Like even when you start to build up all of your quality of life abilities, like once you get auto build and you've got a bunch of batteries that will help you get around, it just means that you can discover more stuff. It doesn't mean you're going to get around faster. It's just like, oh, well, now I get distracted by these 10 new things that are in the sky or on this ridge that I couldn't get to. And all like, no matter what you do, there's just more content. And the quality of that content is so high. It's not like I'm ever avoiding something other than the Koroks sometimes. I won't always get the Koroks back to their buddies.
I always avoid these.
But I, you know what? Even then, now that I have more batteries and stuff, I'm finding it fun to kind of build contraptions and just like strap them on and get them there. So, yeah, it is truly a remarkable game. So, loving every minute.
It's insane. It is insane. And then you have Diablo on top of it and Final Fantasy, and it's like, how do you divide your time between these?
How do you? It basically, for me, it falls into, okay, because I'm playing through Tears of the Kingdom with my partner, because she's as big, if not even a bigger fan of Zelda than I am. And so that's kind of like our cool down game every night. If we're not dedicating a huge chunk to it, we'll play at least an hour or two every night. Diablo is the social game, so that's like, oh well, if my friends are up, we'll play that. And then Final Fantasy is right now kind of like that cinematic experience. It's like your HBO. You boot it up after dinner and you play it. So it's a really nice thing to be able to dive between all these different experiences, but a little overwhelming. And two of those games are rather heavy and dark, so occasionally you do need to break it up. You know, we went and finally saw the new Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse movie the other night just to break it up and get out of the house. But it is a good time to be gaming.
Yeah. It's one of those things that we talked about earlier, how most people just play one game.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine if they have to do all these dailies and all these quests and they're really invested in this one game, getting into another one would be very overwhelming.
And to your point earlier, too, it's like, how is PlayStation going to support all of these different games? So let's say that in 3 more years, they have managed to sell 100 million PlayStation 5s. Okay, so you have this player base of 100 million people. You've now launched 5 different live service games. And you need at least 5 million players to make those actually sustainable. So you've got these 5 games. That's 25 million players that you would need out of 100 million to be playing those 5 games. And they need to be spending money on that. So a quarter of your player base just for that. It's possible, but then you have to remember that a chunk of that is only playing Call of Duty. A chunk of that already has their games. And then you're trying to tell me that there's going to be no overlap between any of those player bases. So these live service games, Marathon can't have any crossover with this other one. I can't even remember the name of it. It was like something to do with stealing money. Fair Games? Fair Games. Yeah. Fair Games and Marathon are both extraction shooters. And there was another extraction shooter. There were 3 extraction shooters. So you can't have any crossover between this because, as you said, you have to be able to do your dailies. You have to be invested in the ecosystem. Your friends are playing this game. I am very concerned about this shift away from high quality single player exclusives. And I'm not against multiplayer games. God, no. We love our multiplayer games. We play them together, and it's really fun having co-op experiences. But it's unsustainable for live service specifically to be able to update constantly and support these players who want endless content at a high quality, at a high pace. I don't know.
Exactly. It's unsustainable.
It's unsustainable.
I don't think it's going to work, but we'll see.
We
Maybe
will
they'll
see.
give a window for Xbox to come back with some nice big hits. Take
I
the
hope
spot
so.
again.
I hope so. You know what? They need competition. This is the thing. Everybody needs competition. This is a healthy thing. We should not say go PlayStation, go Xbox. It's like, no, go both, because that's how we get the best stuff. We want this competition where everybody's putting out 10 out of 10 games. It only benefits us. So
Yeah,
healthy competition is good competition. Sashi,
exactly.
that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Second Monitor Podcast. Thank you, everybody, for chilling with us today, for having us up on your second monitor and listening to this. It's a good time. It's always just nice chatting.
Yes, if you have a second monitor. I have heard some rumors that some viewers might not actually have a second monitor to put this upon. I
Do
know
they have a phone? Or
I don't know.
imagine somebody
You
watches
classify
this on
that
their
as-
Switch. I would love that. If anybody ever watches this on their Switch, can you let me know? Because Switch has the YouTube app. I would love that. Or if somebody has their Wii hooked up still and they're watching this on their Wii,
Imagine.
please. Or you know what? I'm going to be that guy. The next time I listen to a podcast, I'm going to hook up my Wii and I'm going to be playing with my Wii while I listen to like a podcast.
See, I don't know how to feel about you playing with your
Okay. All right, sir. All right. Well, that's going to do it. Sashi, thank you for joining me this week.
Well, thank you for having me, Mr. CB. Next time, we'll be in another room. We'll be
I'm
in a new
excited to see it.
place. Yes. And
Good luck with the move.
Hopefully we'll be on time. And we don't have a month between our uploads. We'll see.
Maybe. This is very informal. Right, dear viewers? You support Sashi moving into a new place that has slightly less intense temperatures in the summer.
I hope so.
I hope so.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
Hopefully. Bye.
Bye-bye.